Harry Potter story from another's perspective. Rowan Barrows and the Forgotten Prophecy, short stories, gobstones. The Hufflepuff common room hummed softly with evening conversation, warm and golden beneath the glow of the fire. Rain tapped against the round windows while students lounged in armchairs surrounded by parchment and half-finished homework. Rowan sat near the hearth with a herbology textbook open across his knees, though he'd been staring at the same paragraph for several minutes now without properly reading it. Rowan glanced up. Justin Finch-Fletchley stood nearby holding a small velvet pouch beneath one arm, his robes neat as always despite the chaos of the common room around him. "What's that?" Rowan asked, gesturing to the small pouch. "They're gobstones. Do you want a game instead of pretending to revise?" Rowan frowned slightly. "I'm not pretending." Justin gave him a doubtful look. Before Rowan could answer, Ernie Macmillan leaned over the back of the sofa, clutching several rolls of parchment. "He absolutely is," Ernie informed Justin seriously. "He's been staring at that page so long I thought he'd fallen asleep with his eyes open." "I'm reading. You've been on Venomous Tentacula for 20 minutes. Rowan glanced slowly down at the page. Unfortunately, they were correct. Justin smiled with satisfaction and dropped the velvet pouch onto the table. "Perfect," he announced. "Then you're free." Rowan eyed the pouch suspiciously. "I'm busy." Justin tipped the contents out, carefully ignoring Rowan. Several polished gobstones rolled across the table. Rowan blinked. "Those are just marbles." Ernie gasped in horror. Justin looked offended on Ernie's behalf. "They are not marbles," Ernie corrected, immediately lowering himself into the armchair opposite Rowan. "Gobstones is a respected wizarding game." Justin nodded along confidently, despite clearly not knowing much more than Rowan. "I only learnt properly this year," he admitted. "Ernie absolutely destroyed me the first time." "Twice," Ernie corrected proudly. Justin ignored him. Rowan picked up one of the stones cautiously. "So how does it work?" Ernie straightened slightly, clearly delighted to explain. "Right," he said importantly. "The aim is to knock your gobstones closest to the centre circle." "That sounds easy enough." Ernie gave him a knowing look. "That's because you haven't reached the disgusting part yet." Justin grimaced slightly. "The first time it sprayed me, I thought it was broken." "It's meant to do that," Ernie explained. "If someone loses a point or their stone gets hit, the gobstone squirts foul-smelling liquid at them." Rowan slowly lowered the stone. "Why?" Ernie considered this. "Tradition. That's not a real reason. It's still the reason." Justin sat cross-legged beside the table. "Honestly, wizard games are slightly concerning when you think about them too long." "That explains Quidditch," Rowan muttered. Ernie pointed approvingly. "Exactly." A few minutes later, Rowan discovered gobstones was somehow worse than he'd imagined. Ernie flicked his gobstone neatly across the table. It struck Rowan's directly. A jet of horrible-smelling liquid blasted straight into Rowan's face. The common room erupted with laughter. Rowan recoiled violently. "Oh, that is awful!" Justin nearly fell sideways laughing while Ernie looked deeply pleased with himself. "Excellent shot," Justin said. "It smells like rotten cabbage." Ernie nodded thoughtfully. "Good quality gobstones, then." Rowan wiped furiously at his face with his sleeve while Justin struggled to stop laughing. "This is a terrible game." "You're only saying that because you're losing," Ernie informed him. "I'm saying it because something just sneezed on me." Determined now, Rowan picked up his own gobstone. Ernie folded his arms confidently. "Careful with your angle. It's more precise than it looks." Rowan narrowed his eyes and flicked the stone harder. It cracked neatly into Justin's gobstone instead. A thick spray of foul-smelling liquid exploded directly across Justin's robes. There was a moment of silence, then Ernie burst out laughing. Justin stared down at himself in absolute betrayal. Rowan blinked once, then grinned despite himself. Ernie pointed dramatically across the table. "Beginner's luck." "No," Rowan said slowly. "I think I'm naturally talented." Justin looked horrified. "Oh, Brilliant. Now there are 2 of you. Justin picked up another gobstone. He carefully lined up his shot before flicking the stone across the table. It struck Rowan's gobstone and sent it spinning towards the edge. Rowan leaned forward. Come on. The stone stopped just outside the circle. Justin grinned. Point to me. Rowan shook his head. Lucky. Justin laughed as he picked up another stone. By now, a few other Hufflepuffs had started watching. 2 first years had pulled up chairs, while Ernie had taken the job of keeping score. 4 points each, Ernie announced. Rowan lined up his next shot. This one was harder. He flicked the stone. It struck one gobstone, which knocked another across the board. The second stone rolled slowly towards the centre before stopping neatly inside. A small cheer came from the growing crowd. Justin looked at the board. All right, that was good, Rowan smiled. Thanks. Justin picked up his next stone. Now watch this. The game continued like that for another few minutes, neither of them able to pull far ahead. What had started as 2 friends avoiding their homework had somehow become a small competition, with half a dozen Hufflepuffs now watching over their shoulders. The fire crackled warmly nearby while rain whispered against the windows, and Rowan had completely forgotten about his herbology book. For once, he didn't mind. Ravenclaw versus Slytherin. The wind whipped sharply across the Quidditch stands, carrying the roar of the crowd high above the pitch as students flooded into the seats wrapped in house scarves and winter cloaks. Rowan pulled his Hufflepuff scarf tighter around his neck as he climbed the endless wooden steps beside Jack Cooper. I still don't understand why we came this early, Rowan muttered. Because, Jack said seriously, good seats are important. We're watching Ravenclaw versus Slytherin. Exactly. You need excellent seats to properly watch Slytherin lose. Rowan snorted quietly. Jack grinned and finally dropped into a pair of seats halfway up the stands. From there, the whole pitch stretched below them, bright green against the grey winter sky, towers rising around the stadium while banners snapped violently in the wind. The Ravenclaw section nearby had already started chanting. Across from them, the Slytherins booed loudly in response. Friendly atmosphere, Rowan observed. That's Quidditch, Jack said simply. He looked far more awake than usual today, leaning forward eagerly against the railing while students continued piling into the stands around them. Jack liked Quidditch in the way Ollie liked dangerous creatures, completely and loudly. Rowan had learned this very quickly after making the mistake of casually mentioning he'd never properly watched a full match before. Apparently that had offended Jack on a personal level. Below them, Madam Hooch strode onto the pitch carrying the crate of balls, while both teams emerged from the changing rooms to thunderous cheers. The Ravenclaw team swept onto the field in blue robes, their seeker looping gracefully overhead already. Then came Slytherin. Green banners exploded across the opposite stands, while boos echoed around the stadium. Jack immediately joined in enthusiastically. You don't even know half their names, Rowan pointed out. I don't need to. That feels unfair. It's Slytherin. Fairness left ages ago. The whistle blew. 14 broomsticks launched into the air all at once. The crowd erupted. The quaffle flew between players so quickly Rowan could barely follow it. Ravenclaw scored first within minutes. Blue smoke burst into the air around the stands while the Ravenclaw section screamed themselves hoarse. Jack punched the air triumphantly. Yes! Come on! A group of older Hufflepuffs behind them immediately started chanting against Slytherin too. For a while, Ravenclaw dominated completely. Their chasers moved like birds in formation, passing so smoothly Rowan almost forgot how dangerous the game actually was. Then Slytherin started playing rough, very rough. That was a foul! Jack shouted furiously as one of the Slytherin beaters slammed a bludger directly toward a Ravenclaw chaser, who barely managed to dodge it. The Slytherin section applauded loudly. Oh, they're cheating now, Jack muttered darkly. Classic. The match grew nastier as it went on. Players collided mid-air. The crowd screamed every time someone nearly fell from their broom. At one point, the Ravenclaw keeper spun sideways, avoiding a bludger, and almost flew directly into one of the goal hoops. Jack looked increasingly personally offended by every Slytherin point scored. This is painful to watch. You're acting like you're on the team. I emotionally am. Rowan laughed quietly. Then suddenly, the crowd roared. Both seekers had spotted the snitch. They shot upward at impossible speed, robes snapping violently behind them as the tiny flash of gold darted across the pitch. Everyone stood. Jack grabbed Rowan's arm hard enough to bruise it. There! The Ravenclaw seeker dived sharply. The Slytherin seeker cut across in front of her. For one brilliant second it looked like Ravenclaw had it. Then the Slytherin seeker's hand closed around the snitch. The green stands exploded with noise. Jack collapsed back onto the bench in devastation. No. Below them, the Slytherin team circled the pitch victoriously, while Ravenclaw players descended looking furious. Jack stared at the field like he'd just witnessed a national tragedy. They didn't deserve that. Rowan smiled faintly. You said that last time Slytherin played. Because it's always true. Students began filing out of the stands around them while snow started drifting lightly from the clouds overhead. Jack stood slowly, still looking deeply disappointed. I hate Quidditch. You literally love Quidditch. Yes, Jack said seriously, which is why this hurts. Fizzy fairy bites. Snow drifted softly beyond the round dormitory windows while the Hufflepuff boys' dorm glowed warm beneath the light of several crookedly hanging lanterns. Most of the castle had long since gone quiet, but the first-year Hufflepuff dormitory absolutely had not. That cannot possibly be safe, Justin Finch-Fletchley said for the third time that evening. Ollie ignored him completely. You only think that because you lack imagination. I think that because the packet is smoking. Rowan sat cross-legged on his bed, trying unsuccessfully not to laugh, while Ollie enthusiastically shook a brightly coloured paper bag in front of everyone. Written across the front in glittering gold letters were the words, Fizzy Fairy Bites. Warning, side effects may vary. My dad sent them for Christmas, Rowan explained as Zachariah Smith leaned over curiously from the neighbouring bed. Ernie adjusted himself importantly against his pillow. I've heard about these. You've heard about everything, Zacharias muttered. Ernie ignored him. They're supposed to react differently depending on the flavour, he continued knowledgeably. My cousin ate one once and floated into a chandelier. Ollie looked delighted. Excellent! Justin looked horrified. That is not the correct reaction to that sentence. Ollie had already torn the bag open. Inside sat dozens of brightly coloured sweets shaped vaguely like stars, each crackling faintly with sparks of sugar. They smell dangerous, Zacharias observed suspiciously. They smell strawberry, Rowan corrected. That too. Ollie immediately grabbed a bright blue one. Justin pointed at him. Wait, shouldn't we figure out what they do first? Ollie looked genuinely confused. Why would we ruin the surprise? Then he ate it. For one completely normal second, nothing happened. Then Ollie's ears started smoking. Zacharias barked out a laugh. Ollie blinked. Why is everyone looking at me like that? A moment later, tiny bright blue sparks shot out of Ollie's nose when he sneezed. The dormitory erupted. Justin doubled over laughing while Rowan nearly dropped the packet entirely. Ernie looked deeply impressed. Excellent quality enchantment. Ollie sneezed again. More sparks exploded across the blankets. This, he announced proudly, is the greatest sweet ever invented. Zacharias immediately snatched a green one from the bag. If Pennington survived it, it can't be that dangerous. You're absolutely making a mistake, Justin informed him. Zacharias tossed the sweet into his mouth anyway. There was a pause. Then suddenly his voice shot up 3 octaves. I sound ridiculous. The boys collapsed into helpless laughter. Zacharias looked personally betrayed by his own throat. This is humiliating. His squeaky voice somehow made it worse. Even Rowan couldn't breathe properly anymore. Justin wiped tears from his eyes. You sound like an angry garden gnome. I hate all of you. Ollie was now laughing hard enough that sparks kept bursting from his sleeves every few seconds. Ernie finally selected one carefully from the packet. I think, he said importantly, the key is moderation. He ate the sweet delicately. Nothing happened. Ernie looked smug immediately. You see? Sensible choices produce sensible results. Suddenly his hair turned violently bright pink. There was complete silence for 1 second. Then Zachariah screamed, laughing into his pillow. Ernie grabbed at his hair in horror. What's happened? Justin pointed weakly. You look like a startled flamingo. I do not. You absolutely do, Rowan wheezed. Ernie lunged toward the mirror beside his bed and let out a noise of genuine devastation. Oh, this is cruel. By this point the dormitory had descended entirely into chaos. Ollie's sneezes now created sparks. Zachariah still sounded ridiculous. Ernie's hair remained aggressively pink. And Justin, after loudly insisting he would absolutely not participate, finally gave in and tried a small yellow sweet. For several seconds nothing happened. Justin folded his arms smugly. Well, clearly some people simply possess stronger magical resistance. Without warning, Justin floated gently upward off the floor. Everyone froze. Justin blinked downward from several feet in the air. Oh dear! Ollie immediately pointed at him triumphantly. He's ascended! Justin drifted slowly toward the ceiling, looking deeply offended by the entire experience. This is undignified. You're upside down, Rowan informed him through laughter. I'm aware. The noise in the dormitory became impossible to contain after that. At one point, someone from the dorm below banged loudly on the ceiling and yelled something about people trying to sleep. Nobody listened. Eventually, Rowan realized that he was laughing, the kind that hurt your stomach and made your face ache afterward. Justin looking increasingly annoyed with the situation. Someone get me down, Ollie was laughing too hard to answer. Rowan wiped his eyes. Just wait. It'll probably wear off. How long? I don't know. That's not helpful. Rowan looked down at the packet still sitting on his bed. There were only a handful of sweets left. He picked one up. It was a small purple one covered in sparkling sugar. Justin looked down at him. Rowan, don't. Rowan smiled. What? We've already established these things are dangerous. Everyone else has had one. And look at us. Rowan looked around the dormitory. Ollie's ears were still smoking. Zacharias was still speaking in a ridiculous squeak. Ernie was trying desperately to flatten his pink hair. Justin was floating near the ceiling. Rowan shrugged. Fair point. He popped the sweet into his mouth. For a moment, nothing happened. Rowan looked around expectantly. See? Ollie grinned. Maybe yours is broken. Then Rowan burped. A puff of purple smoke exploded from his mouth. Everyone went silent. Rowan blinked. Another puff escaped from his nose. Ollie burst out laughing. You've got smoke coming out of you. Rowan tried to speak. Instead, another cloud of purple smoke escaped his mouth. Justin started laughing so hard that he spun slowly in mid-air. What does it taste like? Rowan thought about it. Raspberries. Another puff of smoke escaped. Ollie collapsed backwards onto his bed. You're a chimney. Rowan couldn't help laughing too. For the next several minutes, every time Rowan laughed, spoke or sneezed, another little cloud of purple smoke puffed from his mouth. Eventually, he simply gave up trying to stop it. Best Christmas ever, Ollie declared. Rowan smiled.